Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. On today's episode, we're going to interview actor John James. He's starring great TV shows like Dynasty, Colby, As the World Turns, All My Children, and countless other hits. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. Now, let's say hello to actor John James. Hello, John. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well, John. It's a good day today
Yeah,
for
it
me
does. It does
and a
feel
good
that
day to
way.
meet you.
It does feel that way. Yeah.
Yes.
So, John, you've started many hits over the years. How did all these opportunities come to you? Were you really good at picking projects, or did your agents bring them to your attention? How did it work? Because most people are very
Well,
fortunate if they can get one great project in a lifetime, but you seem to go from hit to hit to hit.
my wife is going to, success is when preparation meets an opportunity,
Mhm.
and I believe in that. So when I set out as an actor, I knew that it was just not standing in front of a camera, or getting up on a stage. It's a trade. I consider acting a trade. It's a skill. It's a learned skill. But like anything, I mean, there are piano players that are just, they're able to sit down at the age of 4 and they can just bang away on a piano. And there are actors that way. But generally, I mean, you need to know your skills. So I went and I enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, which is the country's oldest acting school now. And I think it's 3 years. At the time, it was only 2 years. So I wanted to learn what it meant to be an actor and certain skills, which thankfully, I was able to utilize years later. But yeah, I mean, my first professional job as an actor, and I was so thrilled to get paid at the age of 20 something, 21, 20, was on a soap opera. And I remember what's so different today, everything is self-taping, where you get in front of a white wall and you tape and you send it in. Even more so now because of COVID. And I went into the casting office and she said, frankly, I think you're too old to play high school. I said, oh, come on. You haven't been to high school lately. Kids look this age, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to be a salesman as well. And I got the job. And I did that for a couple of years. Shared a dressing room with Kevin Kline. Chris Reeves was working next door. And in New York City, they had at the time, I believe, 10 soap operas or 9 soap operas. So every actor worked on that to pay the rent and get experience and then do theater at night. So that's where my start was it doing a soap and working in New York. My big break came when they fired me from the soap, but I kind of knew that was a dead end issue because I really didn't want to stay on the soap for the next 15 years and I was still young. So it was, they did me a favor by firing me. And my agent called me probably about 6 months after I was let go. And she said, ABC Television is having a talent search. I said, what? I said, oh, all of us are talking about that's stupid. It's a nationwide talent search. They're going to probably see or have 10,000 young actors submitted for this thing. I said, no. She said, no, you're going to go. So I met Joyce Selznick of the Selznick Empire, entertainment empire. And she was hired by ABC. She was a manager at the time and a casting director. And she was hired by ABC to look for young new talent, to be put under contract, like the old studio days, for a year. And shop that young crop of talent, 15, maybe 10 actors, and get them placed in television. And I walked into her office and she looked at me and she said, what are you doing next week? I said, the same thing I'm doing this week, looking for a job. Why? She said, you're going to California with me. And that was that. And I got on the plane. I sat down. I looked over in the other part of the plane. There was a young actor, and I sat next to him, and that was Tom Hanks. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm on this ABC. I said, really? So Tom ended up doing Bosom Buddies. Ann Jillian was on there. Donna Mills, who's married now to many years to Dan Aykroyd. And that program with ABC continued for another 8, 9 years, where on the final year of the program, I met my wife, who I've been married to 32 years, at one of those events. And she was selected as being one of the actors. I went to the event and I met my wife. So it was a good program for me.
Isn't it interesting how money and love can come into one's life at about the same time? It's
It
very,
did.
yeah,
It did, John.
yeah. So you really exploded in the pop culture when you started working on Dynasty with, John Forsythe, Linda Evans, Joan Collins, and of course it was created by super producer Aaron Spelling. Once that show hit the air, how dramatically did your life change?
Um, 180 degrees. I have a saying: no one can prepare themselves for their loss of anonymity. In other words, for me, suddenly not to be able to go to certain places at certain times. When my wife and I would go to New York, she'd say, "Can we go to Bloomingdale's?" I said, "No, no, I can't. I mean, you can, but I can't." Not that I mean, I love meeting people, but it becomes kind of a nuisance when you have limited time. And I'm the kind of guy who would stand there and shake everybody's hand and sign autographs. And as more people gather, people who don't even know who I am gather to find out what's going on, gather. And next thing you know, you got 50 people standing around you, and half of them don't even know who you are. And so it changed my life enormously. And I mean, it was a crawl. We started off and it was kind of iffy whether or not they were going to pick us up. Then Joan came on the second year. And then all of a sudden, our show, we started to gel as a cast. And to be in the #1 rated show in the United States back in the 80s, when there were 3 networks, our largest audience, John, was 60 million people in the United States. To give you your audience a comparison of today, the lowest rated show of my spinoff, The Colbys, with Charlton Heston, Barbara Stanwyck, Catherine Ross, Maxwell Caulfield, great cast. The lowest rated Colbys was higher than the highest rated Big Bang Theory show, which was one of the biggest recent hits.
I think one of the things that really impacted viewers around the world was the extraordinary level of wealth and beauty that Dynasty allowed them to see in their living rooms every week. Was that a deliberate part of the show's secret formula for success?
Yes, you were spot on. And, we used to joke that our flower arrangements cost was the equivalent of some of the television shows' budgets. I mean, Doug Kramer and Aaron, but they wanted a look. Aaron sold Fantasy Island, Love Boat, Getting Away from It All. He was very clever. He realized that, it's been a hard week or a hard day at work. People want to come down. They just want to go away, be taken away. And I think the trick for Dynasty was to see this rich looking television show that was just over the top pretty to look at. The colors, we shot in Panavision. They made sure, and if you ever watch any of the old shows, it's very reminiscent of the full Technicolor style that was shot in the 50s when they really took advantage of the Technicolor. So all the colors and the richness of the colors and the set design, and to see rich people with more problems than they did. And Aaron was very clever. He knew who he was programming to, which was, working class Americans and people around the world, and who just wanted sheer fantasy. And now it's become, obviously, it's pop culture. It's even today, it's still popping up. I think the show is This Is Us, an NBC show that's on now. Their season finale was the lead character sitting down to watch an episode of Dynasty.
Now, the women on the show were just genetic perfection. Who was casting those women? Because they were all stunning.
Oh, that's all Aaron. I mean, Sophia Loren actually turned down Joan's role. Um, Aaron had Aaron had a wish list, and then the producers would go out and get them. Um, Aaron really was the ultimate casting director. He was hands on.
One of the genius moves of the writers was to show a bunch of rich people getting into fistfights every 15 minutes, rolling around on the floor,
Well, what happened?
slugging it out.
That's very true. You know, they have, for your audience, they have research and they have overnight ratings, which is they can kind of get an idea. And apparently, what happened was the first time Joan and Linda got into a fist fight, I believe, was in Joan's guest house. It was early on in this, maybe third season. You know, the rating just was going beep, you know, and they thought, oh, that worked. And I can't tell you how many fights I got into, and let alone the cat fights. But yeah, it was camp. It was fun. It was never, you know, it's not Grey's Anatomy for God's sakes. It was a fantasy. It was entertainment.
Yeah, just amazing. Of course, now with social media, there are entire channels dedicated to just people, celebrities or normal people, slugging it out on the streets. But, this was an early precursor to all of that. So it was brilliant.
Absolutely.
So you have this great story about meeting Joan Collins for the first time on the set of Dynasty. Can you revisit that for us?
Sure. I didn't know who Joan was, frankly. I knew she was an actress from England, and she had a long career up to that point, very successful actress. And she's a character. To this day, I would consider her a close friend. And I remember sitting out having lunch outside the commissary at 20th Century Fox. And she settles up next to me. And after a minute, she said, how much money are you making? And I said, how much money are you making? Never told her. But we became super close friends. And I was at her house. And I got to tell you, John, it was great because I'd go to her house and I'd be leaning on the damn piano with Elton John playing the piano till 4 a.m. in the morning. Roger Moore standing there, Sidney Poitier standing there. It was just great off El Camino, off Crescent Boulevard, anyway, up in the Hollywood Hills. It was just magical. And I'm just so fortunate to have met and worked with all these wonderful people.
Tell me about the stunning Linda Evans. What was she like in person?
Linda is a saint. She's one of those kind of people who just goes through life. I don't know, wouldn't hurt a flea. She reminds me of my wife. I mean, if there was a fly, she'd probably carry it outside. She, good actress, wonderful lady. One of my favorite people.
She presents so incredibly well, not just visually, but the persona. I'm curious, what was her ethnic background? Was she French? Was she German? Do you have any idea?
I don't know, but I got to tell you, I think she's got that California thing going. Maybe I don't know. I never even thought of that, but she certainly has maybe Nordic. That Swedish, Nordic, German.
And also her personality, it is so friendly. It almost feels like she could have been in the South at some point. She's got that sweet Southern nature.
I don't know if she's Southern, but I would lean more to California. That's probably
Yeah, yeah. So, what are some of the biggest benefits of being on a hit TV show like Dynasty? Not just financially, not just socially. Did it affect your family positively or negatively in any way? Did it affect any other aspects of your life?
Well, the positive things are suddenly I can buy expensive cars. I could build a beautiful home on Mulholland Drive. A lot of it had to do with, money.
Yeah.
To be quite frank, I mean, money changes everything. and suddenly you're making a lot of money. Um, you're meeting Michael Jackson on the set because he's a fan. You're meeting Elizabeth Taylor, who's a fan on the set. People would visit our set often. You're meeting presidents, right? Went to the White House for a couple of wonderful state dinners. You're getting to ride in the Blue Angels jet at an air show, going on a nuclear submarine and having a drink with the captain.
How was that arranged? Was that a promotional thing? Being on the submarine?
I have no idea. I actually was doing a show with Roddy McDowell, a tour of Dial M for Murder. I don't know. And our show manager said that you're in town and he's a huge fan of you and Roddy, and he'd love to entertain you on the SS, it's hanging on my wall, the SS, wherever it is, nuclear submarine, and the captain will buy you a drink. He brought out the rum,
That's
and it was
really
great.
that's really interesting. You never
Well, those are the good things. The negative things, I'd say, as we were talking about before, maitre d's don't watch television at night, so they never knew who you were. So you never got a great table. That's a negative. But the patrons knew who you were. And the negative thing of not being able to go where you'd like to go at the height of your popularity. I don't want to say fame, but popularity, because it fades. That's a negative. But generally, I mean, it's just changes your life when you go on a show that was. I mean, there are other number one rated shows, but I think Dynasty was just almost frenetic in its when it was really rolling. I mean, people were flipping out over the show.
Now, you mentioned living on Mulholland Drive, and that street is famous for Nicholson and Brando and the parties they threw for years and years. Did you ever meet or hang out at any of their parties?
No, I didn't, but I knew where Jack Nicholson's house was. I knew where Richard Dreyfuss's was. I knew where Axl Rose's house was. He was a neighbor. Mike Nader, who just passed away, who played Dex, he bought the house at my urging him to, my next door neighbor, who was owned by Susan Blakely. Yeah, Mulholland's a storied place. It's a wonderful place to live if you're in Los Angeles. And I was lucky enough to find some property and build a beautiful home there.
So the 80s were a time when so many people were experiencing tremendous financial success, as you know. If you had to guess, how much money do you think Aaron Spelling made off Dynasty? Just take a wild guess.
I can't, John, but I can tell you he had the largest home in Beverly Hills for many years. And I think it just sold for $150 million to the daughter of the guy who started Formula One racing in Europe, Eccleston, his daughter Eccleston. He made a lot of money. And I can't tell you. The problem with Dynasty for him, where he made his money, is worldwide syndication. Dynasty is a serial, so it has to run in sequence, which doesn't make it very attractive to syndicated buyers, because if you buy Seinfeld, you can run episode 1, episode 60, episode 40, episode 300. Dynasty's got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And syndicators don't like that because they like people to pop in and say, oh, this is a funny show, and it may be episode 100 of Jerry Seinfeld. So the syndication, or the back end of the show, wasn't terrific, although it's still running in sequence all over the world. But I think Dynasty was in close to 70 territories, maybe at one point around the world. So they did do very well in overseas television sales, but not as much in syndication.
So, for those people who may not know, Spelling was also involved in the, I guess, creation and production of The Love Boat, Beverly Hills 90210, Seventh Heaven,
The
Melrose.
Rookies.
Yeah, Charlie's Angels, Starsky and Hutch. It goes on and on. And it seemed like he was literally printing money with all of these shows. Did you get the impression that he paid his stars well, or was he a little stingy with his salary
As
offers?
well. Aaron was old school. Aaron wanted to be an actor. He was couldn't get arrested as an actor, became a writer and a producer, and he was old school. He treated his actors well. Tough negotiator. I'll tell you a quick story about negotiating with Aaron because I was pretty good too. They used to call me Dow James because I like to trade stocks, and I used to trade on set with a little FM receiver. I was to do the Colbys, the spinoff with Charlton Heston and Pamela Sue Martin. Pamela Sue Martin leaves the show. We had negotiated a deal, then it was shelved. And 2 years later, I was approached and they said, "Would you like to do it again?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "What's the deal?" So my agent at William Morris called me and they said, "Okay, we got the deal. They want to go. They're going to hire a new girl to play Fallon, and they're going to give you star billing." And I said, "Well, this is all great." He said, "Yes, but they're going to roll your salary back 2 years." I said, "What? They're going to ask me to take a pay cut and give me my own show? Because every year we got a bump." I said, "What?" They said, "Yeah." They went, "They're going to roll your salary back." I said, "Why would I do that?" He said, "Starring billing, new show." And they said, "Live by your contract." That was your contract that was negotiated. I said, "Oh boy, all right. I'll live by my contract. I got star billing and I'll take a cut in pay." About a week later, my agent calls me all frazzled. He said, "John, we got a big problem." I said, "What's the problem?" "They just signed Charlton Heston." I said, "Why is that a problem? He's going to play my father, right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "They signed him." I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, they gave him star billing." I said, "No, they gave it to me. Just tell them to live by their contract, and it will be John James with Charlton Heston." He said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, tell them to live by their contract." The Colbys starring John James, and then I want Chuck down here on the bottom right, smaller than me. So Aaron called my agent into his office and said, he just basically said this: "How hard are you going to squeeze?" And I told Freddie, I said, "Fred, you just tell him I want to get what I would have been making on Dynasty. That's it. Not a penny more, not a penny less." Aaron was relieved. So he was a tough negotiator. And, but he was fair to his actors, and he always took care of us. There was always a limousine if you needed it to go somewhere. If we never worked terribly long hours. You know, every Christmas or holiday or birthday, there was always flowers or a present. He was old school. He was old school Hollywood.
So I used to work as a producer for Oprah, so I'm very familiar with the entertainment industry. I look back at the 70s and 80s as a sort of golden age of movies and television. You had tremendous success as both an actor and a producer. How would you compare the difficulty of trying to create a hit show back in the day as opposed to creating a hit show today?
Well, you know what I say, John, and you're absolutely right. I liken our period in the 80s as you have the golden age of Hollywood, you have the golden age of television. The 80s was the golden age of television because it had evolved really only 30 years. It had evolved into that point where they're getting these massive audiences. They experimented in the 60s with formats and the sitcoms in the late 50s, and then they went into long series dramas in the 60s, 70s, and then the 80s came along. But that was really the peak of television as far as their audience is concerned, the size. I remember sitting in the makeup room with John Forsythe one day, who played Blake, and we were laughing because they were discussing a 24-hour news channel, CNN, 24-hour weather channel. Movies all the time, 24/7. Oh, come on, cable. So we laughed at that. And we thought, oh, that's interesting. The difficulty, it's funny because we're still kind of like right back at square one. The difficulty in the 80s, 70s, and prior to the massive amount of cable and the internet now, streaming, you had 3 networks. You only had so many hours of programming that you could program for. At the time, also, you know this, producers couldn't own, networks couldn't own the show. It was an antitrust thing that they've since done away with. So you would need an Aaron Spelling, or you would need a Steve Bochco or somebody like that. They produce the show. They own the show. They get money from the network to help produce it. And the network is essentially the exhibitor or the distributor, right? So it was really hard. You had to be an Aaron Spelling. You had to be a major producer to get anything on the air. So in that sense, the 80s was very tough because you had limited distribution or exhibition. Feature films, on the other hand, were different because you still had independent films and smaller theaters that would run your, like Goonies and things like that Roger Corman would do. So you still had that market, and you had the VHS market and the rental market, so you could always go out into that market. Now we've smash cut here today. Your show's on the internet. I mean, you can make a film. I know a producer who made a film on an iPhone, and he actually made money.
And it actually looks good on the screen.
Yeah. When I was trying to produce movies and I had a deal, an output deal for a TV movie through Orion with, I can't think of his name right now, but pretty famous producer. And my gosh, the film stock for 35 millimeter film was $40,000 to do a feature film. That's how much the film cost, let alone the damn having to have it developed and then have it color corrected. Today, you could go out and buy all the equipment you need used, like a black box or a Arri or whatever you want, $20,000. You're all in. You're done. And you got everything you need. And you can edit it right here at home on Final Cut or Avid. But so that's consequently what's happened is there's so much product now, that it's hard to get an audience, because how do you get your product in front of people and have them pay for it? Out of all the thousands of films being made a year, and I mean thousands, that's the trick.
John, you always seem to have conducted your life with dignity and professionalism. Why do you think so many other entertainers self-destruct with drugs and alcohol? Why is it almost the chosen path for a majority of the people in that world? I'm amazed by it. I'm just amazed. Nobody seems to learn from previous generations.
Let me correct. I wouldn't say it's the majority, but there are a lot. And I think when people become famous and you work so hard, because it is a tough business. I mean, it's not like, oh, yeah, it only took me 10 years to be an overnight success. You fight, you scrap, you do this, and you're finally there. And when you get there, it's not going to fix what you thought it would fix. And a lot of times people, like for me, I was just terribly shy, and I thought being famous would make me feel better. Well, it didn't. It didn't make me feel better. In some ways, I felt actually lonelier and more introverted because of that. I didn't like the attention. I thought I would, but I didn't like it. I mean, it's kind of, why me? Why? Because I'm on television. You start having these questions, and some people can't handle that. And, knock on wood, I never did drugs or anything like that. Although I did drink, and I do enjoy my drink today. But I know people, certainly a lot of them, who really got messed up on drugs. And but that's an epidemic that's frankly part of our culture today on a massive scale. It's just that it's magnified when you're a celebrity. magnified. But I think part of that is it's the pressure of being that and staying relevant as an actor or a performer. That's the hard thing. It's getting there is sometimes easier than it is to stay there.
Do you think it's your work ethic, your ambition, or your
Well,
professionalism?
John, listen, it hasn't been easy for me. I mean, for God's sakes, I knew right out of the bat after the show went to number one, and it looked like we were going to go probably 9 years or 10 years, that the writing was on the wall. I was typecast. You know, I mean, I don't have to tell you, you're in the entertainment business after you do a big hit series. I mean, look at Jerry Seinfeld. Even Jerry couldn't get another show after his show. Julia Dreyfus, she was lucky. She had a couple of shows, but the rest of the cast, all good actors, all wonderful character actors. And that's part of the problem, because for many years, and suddenly it's opening up for me because I'm an old, 65 now. And I'm a different look. But for many years, they'd go, "Oh, God, we loved him. He was so good in that show." But he's Jeff Colby.
Yeah, I never understood that nonsense, by the way. But
Well, I don't either. I mean, I was an actor. I was playing a role. I mean, but, you're a producer and this is your baby. And I could understand that thinking, because people would say, yeah, but they're just going to see him as this character. So it's not uncommon, and you've heard that, typecasting, and that I knew it was going to be. So I did a lot of theater, which I benefited, which I loved doing in that period. Did a few movies of the week, and independent films, and produced a couple. But just now, things are starting to pop for me again after all these years, and that's true for Jack Coleman, and that's true for Max Caulfield, who was just in American Horror Story with a nice role. And we have literally, I talked to him, it's been lean and mean. It's been very lean. People just don't want to deal with this. Or there's a little jealousy. Hit show in the 80s. We want a new look. That really wasn't acting. Well, yeah, it was. It was entertaining. Don't tell me what it was.
John, tell me, what do you enjoy doing more? Is it acting or producing?
Well, my favorite thing is acting on stage. I absolutely love it. That's the actor's medium, because you become essentially a mini director, editor. You constantly, let's say if there's a laugh somewhere, my goal was to hone it, to get that timing just right. And if I went too far and it didn't work, then I'd pull it back and I'd say, okay, that's it. Now how much more can I do on this? Being on stage as an actor is the number one thing for me. Any actor worth his salt would say the same thing, because there's nothing better than getting that connection with a couple thousand people or 150 people in an audience, and they're right with you, and you just got them right like this. That is fabulous. Producing is a pain in the neck. It is. It's tough, because you know what? You got 175 people that you got to take care of, make sure they show up on the set, or somebody's sick or this or that. You got weather problems, you got this problems, you got to deal with the agents, you got to deal with the unions. And then you're also worried about whether or not you're going to make your money back. It's not an easy business.
What advice do you give to people? And I'm sure you get asked often, when people ask you, how do they get in the entertainment business? Do you have a pat answer, or is it an impossible question to answer?
How to get into it? Well, I recommend going to a city like New York, or a city that has a robust theater, like Chicago, for example. A lot of our great comedians came out of Second City, the Improv Club, or Improv. The reason I say that is it's networking, personal networking. Okay, you don't want to go to California and just show up and say, I'm going to be an actor, because there's 45,000 other people doing that same thing every year. Same thing. It's gotten so tough now. Back in the day, in the 70s, we used to call it making the rounds, where we would take our 8x10 printed pictures and slip them under the agent's doors. And I remember we got so punchy doing that. We went to Otto Preminger's office on 6th Avenue and slipped our 8x10 under there, my buddy and I. it's establishing a network of fellow actors when you're young, because in New York you'll do off Broadway, which doesn't pay anything, but you're up on stage. Get involved in acting classes. Find out if there's local theater. Find out if there's even equity theater, because sometimes they'll take apprentices. These are for the younger kids. I don't believe, frankly, going and spending $150,000 on a college education to become an actor, getting a degree in acting. That's just, might as well throw that out the window. Nobody's going to care about your acting degree. They're going to see if you got the chops. They're going to say, okay, here's your audition. Do a self-tape. Good thing today is it's a double-edged sword. I liked meeting and having that contact with a casting director or a producer or a director one-on-one in the office. Bad thing was, if you're in Los Angeles, count on an hour getting to wherever you need to get to, find a place to park, cool off because you're sweating, because you're nervous and it's hot out. Go in there, you get maybe 2 takes with the casting director. If you blow your lines, you blow your lines. Today, with the self-tape, you can spend all day with somebody, honing it, making it look good, and then submitting it electronically. So, but you don't have any of the feedback that you used to get from the cast. I really want you to do it this. Oh, I never even realized that. Is that what that meant? Oh my gosh. Bang. You don't have that. So, but starting, main thing is, as I said earlier in our interview, is it's a trade, guys. It's a trade. And you can start at any age. That's the wonderful thing about being an actor. You don't have to be 18 years old, right out of high school or out of college. Start at any age.
If you could talk to the young John James at the very start of your career, what advice would you give yourself?
You should have believed in yourself a little more. I couldn't even hardly watch myself on television. I mean, I was dreading Wednesday nights. Dreading it. I just, oh God, I look like an idiot. I wish I had the hair I had back then, John. I thought I had too much hair. I wish I had the hair. I said, oh my God, look at my hair. It's so big. I wish that I believed in myself more as an actor. I mean, it's not easy being a quote pretty boy and being, trying to be serious about being an actor. But geez, I look at some of those early shows. I liked what I did. And what I did is I am still a huge fan of the old Hollywood classic. I mean, my take on my role, I used to love Gig Young. Most people don't know who Gig Young is, but he was a big actor, and I liked his delivery, his style. I also believe that it's funny that they don't call actors artists, but they'll call singers artists. See, actors are artists, and I believe that today there's a tendency, which really started, frankly, in the 90s, and that's what was Aaron's demise. And today you'll find that everything's very serious. I mean, it's almost like watching reality. And it's about as exciting to me as watching paint dry, because I think what makes good acting is that it's an elevated reality, and it's like music. When an actor's voice has certain intonations of up and down and up, it's almost like a melody when they say their lines. I think today I see a lot of actors, and I'll see in my casting, must be grounded in we want this really grounded, which grounded means monotone almost, and almost so underplayed that it's monotone because they want it to be real. Well, no, I don't want to watch reality. I'll watch a reality show. I need that, in my opinion, I need that artistic elevation that I know I'm watching something, but it's pleasing to my eyes and my ears. That's what makes good actors. And so the great actors are the ones who do that, who make it look like they're just speaking reality, but what they're actually doing is elevating it into a melodic tone that you get. Sorry to ramble on like that. But
No, that was great. So before we wrap things up, are there any projects that you would like to
yes,
mention?
funny enough, John, you're good luck, man. I can't mention one because just before you called in, you're texting me, come on, we're going to be on in 5 minutes. I'm on the phone with my agent for a featured film shooting in Europe, which will wrap up the deal today. I said, can I tell him? Can I tell him? She said, no, no, no. But if you ever want to get back to me, or I'll send you a text and let you know what it is. Mm-hmm. It's cool. And the other thing is I got to call this, to try and figure out something to do as an actor during 2020. I was just going up the wall because all the theaters are closed. Some of them they're just getting back in, and I said, I got to do something. I got to do this. So I came up with the idea and I said, you know what's kind of fun? Why don't we do a show? Not a post-film festival symposium where we talk about how the film is, but a show with Jack Coleman, who played Steven, Gordon Thompson, who played Adam, me, maybe Max Caulfield filling in, us four, and it's a show. And we get up on stage and we talk about exactly what we're doing now. What was television back then like? And have a song at the beginning, which is really funny. And it's a beautiful song that I wrote with Jack Coleman called I Think I Know You. And we opened with a song. And I said, I don't want it to be a boring lecture. It's got to be a show. So over the last 3 months, we've been rehearsing, doing Zoom with Mark Rosano, who produced Joan's show legend. He was the produced for Disney, Beauty and the Beast for many, many years, and we're close friends. Andrew Scott, big Dynasty fan. We worked with kind of what you were doing with Ellen. He's a reality show producer, huge Dynasty fan. Well, I can announce that we're going to be at Oscars, our opening show, and we hope it will continue across the country on December the 1st in Palm Springs. It'll be either Jack Coleman, Gordon Thompson, and myself, or Max Caulfield filling in. It's a 70-minute, hour and 15-minute show. And that happened this morning. So
are these going to be live performances, or are they going to be on the internet?
No, man. Oscars in Palm Springs Wednesday night.
Are you going to record it? Are you going to record it and put it online at some point?
No, we're going to do it we're going to take this around the country, and nice. We're going to do venues and theaters and clubs and have some fun. So that I can announce.
Well, it has been great having you on the show. Everybody I talk to about you says the same thing. They respect you. They say you're a professional. They enjoy working with you. And I've just had the same experience with you. You are a pleasure to talk to. I want to wish you all the best and tell you that you're always welcome back on the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. Maybe when I get back from Europe and just before we do our Palm Springs gig, maybe we'll do a little 10-minute clip.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you, John, and wonderful meeting you.
Bye-bye. Same here.